July 1922, 3:30 in the morning. The Nordic sky is already pale, that strange Scandinavian half-light where it never goes fully dark in summer. The air smells like pine resin and cold water. A small group of men stands on the bank of a river in Jämtland, central Sweden. Nobody speaks. One of them kneels down and pries open a wooden crate with a crowbar. Two animals slip into the current. No splash, no drama. They just disappear into the river. The men watch the water for a moment. Then they pick up the empty crate and walk back to their horses. They have no idea what they just started. By nightfall, the first birch tree had been cut. Not with the saw, with teeth. A trunk as thick as a grown man's forearm, gnawed to a perfect hourglass, toppled at an angle so precise it landed across the stream like a bridge that had been measured and planned. By morning, branches and mud were packed against it. The water behind it slowed. Sediment that had been rushing to the sea for 50 years settled to the riverbed for the first time. No engineer drew that blueprint. No government funded that infrastructure project. A 30-kilogram rodent did it, overnight, for free. And what happened next, over the following 100 years, is either the greatest ecological miracle in European history or the most embarrassing admission that modern science has ever had to make. Because Sweden spent millions building machines to do something that an animal they hunted to extinction had already been doing for thousands of years. If you look at a map of Sweden and trace the old medieval place names, you keep finding one word, Bure, the Old Norse word for beaver, Bureälven, Bureholm, Bureå. These aren't random names, they're a memory. For centuries, beavers built dams on virtually every stream in Sweden. The rivers weren't straight, they weren't fast, they were slow, wide, tangled, spreading across floodplains, soaking into the soil, creating wetlands so vast and complex that no engineer today would even know where to begin designing them. The water lingered. It filtered through layers of sediment and root systems. It moved like it had somewhere to be, but wasn't in a rush. Then came the pelts. Beaver fur made the finest hats in Europe, a fashion obsession from London to St. Petersburg that lasted 3 centuries. The castoreum, a waxy secretion from glands near the beaver's tail, was sold as medicine and perfume. Hippocrates was writing about its uses in the 4th century BC. The demand never stopped. The killing never stopped. By the 1860s, the animal that had given Sweden's rivers their names was almost gone. The last documented beaver in Sweden was killed in 1871. The government finally banned hunting in 1873. 2 years too late. And then something strange happened. Something no one noticed, because no one was watching for it. The rivers changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just quietly. Over years and decades, the rivers straightened. The wetlands drained. Water that used to spend weeks soaking through the landscape now rushed to the sea in days. The soil dried out. The streams cut deeper into their banks, running fast and brown with sediment. 3 generations of Swedes grew up looking at those rivers and thinking, this is normal. This is what a river looks like. It wasn't normal. It was a landscape in mourning, and nobody even knew what it had lost. Here's the question nobody was asking in 1922. What exactly does a beaver dam do to water? Because the answer, when scientists finally found it 80 years later, was so unexpected that researchers in 4 different countries had to repeat their experiments before they believed the results. But we'll get to that. First, the man who brought them back. His name was Erik Festin, director of the Ångermanland County Museum. Not a scientist, not a politician, not a wealthy landowner, a curator. A man who spent his days cataloguing artifacts in a small regional museum, and who had become quietly, almost privately obsessed with what Sweden had done to its beavers. In 1919, Festin started selling subscription certificates at country fairs. He stood in market squares and persuaded city merchants to match donations from farmers. He wrote letters. He gave speeches. Some donations came in as small as 25 öre, a quarter of a kroner. School children collected coins in jars. A museum director used his own salary to close the funding gap. His colleague, the hunter-naturalist Axel Sven, captured the feeling in a fundraising letter that still exists in Swedish archives. May we live to see the day when the beaver has re-inhabited its old homes, which now for a whole century have stood empty and abandoned, only a reminder of where human folly and predatory lust can lead. Over 17 years, approximately 80 Norwegian beavers were released at 19 sites across Sweden. No camera traps, no GPS collars, no environmental impact assessments. The science of reintroduction barely existed as a field. Festin's team operated on instinct, conviction, and whatever they could learn by walking riverbanks and talking to farmers. Local hunters tracked the colonies on foot. Newspapers reported every sighting like it was front-page news, because it was. Each confirmed territory felt like a victory. Reproduction was confirmed at 11 of the 19 sites. Slowly, not in months, but in decades, the population began to grow. Those 80 animals became 130,000. They colonized most of the country's river systems, and the entire time, quietly, at night, in streams that nobody was monitoring, they were doing something to the water that nobody understood yet. A wildlife biologist is doing a routine survey in central Sweden. He smells it before he sees it. That specific, sharp scent of fresh-cut wood, almost medicinal, that only comes from one source. He follows the smell downstream and finds the dam. Mud and branches packed tight across the stream. Water pooled behind it into a pond that wasn't there the year before. The surface is still. Dragonflies patrol the edges. A willow that was a sapling 3 years ago now leans over the water, roots submerged in saturated soil. He notes the width of the new wetland, 50 meters across, where last year there was a narrow channel cutting through dry forest floor. Now there is standing water, sedge, reeds, frogs calling from the shallows. And then he notices something else. He writes it in his field notebook. 3 words, cloudy going in. He walks to the downstream side of the dam and looks at the water flowing out. He writes 3 more words, clear coming out. He doesn't know why yet, but he writes it down again at the next dam and the one after that. He's not wrong, and he's not alone. If you're watching this and thinking, why didn't anyone teach me this in school? That's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe right now, because what's coming next is the part that should genuinely make you angry. 3 countries, 3 independent research teams, the same result. Rhode Island, USA. Professor Arthur Gold, University of Rhode Island. Gold's team built aquarium ecosystems that replicated beaver pond conditions and added isotopically enriched nitrogen, the kind that comes from agricultural fertilizers, to the water. The bacteria living in the organic sediment on the pond floor performed a process called denitrification. They converted nitrate into harmless nitrogen gas and released it into the atmosphere. The nitrate didn't just move somewhere else, it ceased to exist as a pollutant. When Gold scaled his results across the density of beaver ponds in southern New England, his estimate stopped him cold. Beaver dams could be removing between 5 and 45% of the nitrate loading from rural watersheds. Gold's own words. We were surprised at how high the rates were. Colorado, USA. Published in Nature Communications. Researchers found that a single beaver dam increased the hydraulic gradient, the pressure driving water through surrounding soils, by 10 to 13 times more than seasonal weather extremes ever did. The result was a 44.2% increase in nitrate removal in the riparian zone. The beaver dam was cleaning the water more effectively than a full season of rainfall. Devon, England. Professor Richard Brazier, University of Exeter. 1 beaver family, 13 dams, a 2.5 hectare enclosure. Those 13 dams trapped over 100 tons of sediment, 70% of it soil eroded from intensively farmed grassland upstream. That sediment was loaded with nitrogen and phosphorus. The exact compounds that water treatment plants spend millions every year to remove. Brazier said it plainly: if beaver dams can purify the water from a human health point of view, it is in better condition for drinking. It still needs to be treated, but it can be less costly to treat that water if it is cleaner. And then came the one that nobody could ignore. Oregon, USA. Beavers moved onto the grounds of a multi-million-dollar stormwater treatment facility. Their dams removed heavy metals from runoff at roughly twice the effectiveness of the human-built infrastructure sitting right next to them. The mechanism is always the same. The dam slows the water. Slow water drops its sediment. The sediment settles. The bacteria go to work. The water that exits downstream is measurably, chemically cleaner than the water that entered. Sweden has 130,000 beavers doing this every night, in river systems spread across most of the country, upstream of the same municipalities that pay millions to filter their drinking water. No electricity, no maintenance budget, no engineer on payroll. So here's what nobody has answered yet. If the science is this clear, if 4 countries have independently confirmed this, why is not a single water treatment model in Europe currently built to include a variable for beaver activity? Why are governments still spending public money solving a problem that a 30-kilogram animal already solved, and solving it better? The answer involves a Stockholm city official, a silenced rifle, and a decision that was made very quietly so the public wouldn't find out. Göran Hartman has studied Swedish beaver populations for decades at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences in Uppsala. He's seen this play out across the country more times than he can count. He describes the pattern with the patience of someone who has watched the same story repeat for 30 years. When beavers first come to an area, landowners are at first positive, happy to have a new and interesting species on their land. When trees start to fall and ditches are dammed up, they start complaining about this new nuisance species. After a while, they get used to the presence of beavers and consider them as natural as roe deer and foxes. Be patient, he says. Patience is easier to recommend than to practice. In Stockholm, 1997, beavers returned to the city's canals for the first time in over a century. Within months, they had gnawed through ornamental trees along the waterfront. Some trees fell dangerously close to pedestrians walking the towpaths. City officials quietly culled 10 beavers over 3 years, using silenced rifles at night so the public wouldn't know. Across Sweden today, 8,000 to 9,000 beavers are culled annually by hunters. The species is no longer protected. Landowners hold hunting rights on their own property and manage beaver populations as they see fit. The tension is structural. The benefits of beaver dams are spread across entire watersheds. Cleaner water for downstream municipalities, reduced flooding, raised water tables, restored fisheries. But the costs land on individual people. A farmer whose field is flooded overnight by a dam that appeared without warning. A landowner whose drainage ditches are blocked. A municipality whose ornamental trees are gone. Nobody compensates a farmer for a flooded field. Nobody reimburses a landowner for the hours spent clearing a blocked ditch. And every dam that gets torn out is a dam that was filtering the water. Every beaver that gets culled is a beaver that was removing nitrogen from a stream that feeds someone's tap. Hartman puts his finger on the exact problem. People have still not learned to be proactive instead of reactive. By the time the complaint arrives, the dam is built, the territory is established, and the options are limited. Here is the irony that nobody wants to say out loud. Sweden builds treatment plants, publicly funded, publicly maintained, to remove nitrogen and phosphorus from drinking water. At the same time, 130,000 beavers are removing nitrogen and phosphorus from the same watersheds, upstream of those plants, for nothing. One system appears in national budgets. The other doesn't. No line item, no credit, no acknowledgement. The engineering frameworks that govern European water management were built for a world without beavers. Sweden has had beavers back for 100 years, and the models still haven't caught up. In 1871, the last beaver in Sweden was killed for its pelt. In 1873, the hunting ban came, 2 years too late. In 1922, a museum director with no budget and a box of donation slips bought 80 animals from Norway and released them into rivers that had forgotten what slow water felt like. Those 80 animals are now 130,000. They rebuilt wetlands that drained while our grandparents were children. They have slowed floods. They have raised water tables. They have restored habitat for species that had vanished from fast, straight, empty rivers. And they have been quietly cleaning the water at a scale no treatment plant can match, in exchange for nothing but being left alone to do what they have always done. A museum curator, a wooden crate, a quarter of a krona. That is how Sweden got its water back. If this story changed something in the way you see the world, share it. Not for the algorithm, because someone in your life needs to hear this. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, do you think Sweden should be paying its beavers? Because in our next video, we go to Normandy, France, where engineers tore down the largest dam ever demolished in European history. 125 feet of concrete, built in 1914, blocking a river for over a century. Scientists said recovery would take a decade. Salmon showed up in weeks. The river dropped 2 degrees Celsius in its first free summer. Vegetation reclaimed banks that had been underwater for 100 years, within months of being exposed. If you thought 80 beavers rebuilding Sweden's water system was fast, wait until you see what a river does when you simply get out of its way. That story is already uploaded. It's waiting for you. Click it now.